All right. So we mentioned again Tiger Woods' return here at the Chevron, where he's had a lot of success. Small field, obviously a great field.
He hasn't played in 3 years.
But yeah, so
because he had the
you
knee.
expect him to win this or no? You're saying that why should we expect him to win it? He hasn't shown he can do it yet. But he's had long. He's supposedly still working with Foley, and he seems to be getting closer and closer. You saw some evidence of that in the Ryder Cup, where he played so well in that in his singles match. So, what do you think?
Here's the first time that I won, because I'm a huge believer that. Was a huge believer that Tiger was coming back, and I'm not saying that he won't. I'm a big fan of Tiger. I root for him. I think it's great. I think it's great for any sport to have a dominant player. I don't think we do right now, but if you remember in the Ryder Cup, there was a point in time where I would say you remember Steve Stricker and he were partners. He and Steve Stricker win a match. They're in the post-match interview, and the reporter said, Tiger, it's got to be awful nice having a guy like Steve Stricker putt for you. And Tiger looked and said, yeah, it sure is. And I thought to myself, wait a minute.
Whoa.
Here's a guy, the best putter I think might be the best putter that's ever been. I remember Zach Johnson saying one time that if there's a putt to be made, Tiger makes it every time. Regardless of what he's doing with Sean Foley, his new swing coach. I don't care if Sean Foley's telling him to play cross-handed and left-handed. Tiger's won because he made every putt. So that's the thing. He hasn't made a lot of putts. So, if he gets it rolling, he obviously has great memories at this golf course. But it doesn't have anything to do with how he hits it. He fire-hosed it for 4 years, and he won every tournament because he made every 15-footer he had to.
That's true. That's true. And I always remember growing up watching Jack Nicklaus. He seemed like the same way to me. If he needed to make a 30-foot putt in the last hole, he made it. I mean, not some of the time. He always made it.
Well, and it's eerie because a lot of times those guys make putts on lines that they'll like Jack Nicklaus talks about how he won the Masters in '86, and we remember that putt on 17 when Vernon Lundquist had that famous call, yes sir, when it went in. Yes. Jack Nicklaus said he's went back to that putt 100 times and has played it, and it won't break the way it did that day. Those guys have had, I know, it's eerie. They have missed Tiger Woods making that putt at Valhalla in the PGA Championship against Bob May. There's no way that putt breaks the way that it did, but it did. I mean,
even his U.S. Open at Torrey Pines.
You're right.
Putt.
That was on POA greens on a broken leg.
Yeah.
I mean, he has that mystical power. Now, that being said, there's kind of a weird thing. I mean, Tom Watson never won a major championship after the time he was 34. I can tell you right now, Mark, he's one of your contemporaries. When Tom Watson was 33 years old, I guarantee you the last thing in your mind was he won't win another major and he's not going to be putting very good.
I could always see him winning another major if he was going to pitch in on 17 to beat the likes of Nicklaus and things like that. And Tom had a problem with the shorter putts, and that would restrict a man from playing.
Got the yips, as they say.
And he was always so aggressive. So when the ball was rolling, it was going to go in. And I agreed with every word that Judd has said here because
that's why That's why you're here, Mark, because I knew you'd agree with me.
And leading into that, my big thing is it's always not just getting the golf lesson. I agree with what he said about Sean Foley. He's going to get this on his own. And I'm going to tell you about this weekend. On Saturday, this guy next to me and his son were out hitting golf balls. Not the nicest day. The next day, he's out there. And Tracy Vest, I consider them to be, there's like 3 or 4 tremendously great players in our section. Tracy Vest is out on Monday. And nobody else is.
No.
And, the great players get it up.
Yep.
They get going, and they do what they have to get going. And I've been around Tiger Woods and seen what he does. And I think he's back focused. I think he's practicing harder than he ever has. His personality, I think, is probably the best blessing that the world of golf has gotten, is that I think we were going to have a great ambassador to the game because he's converting some of his eliteness into the fact that he's going to sign a few more autographs for kids, be more appealing to the crowds. And I think he's going to come back stronger than ever. And when he wins this weekend, which I think he has a strong possibility of doing because he has the desire and he's done the work up to this point in time to get it done. And if he rolls the ball well, he wins. If he doesn't, then maybe a spot just ahead of Lee Westwood.
This probably sounds silly, but I mean, does Tiger need? he hasn't won now in a little while, and I mean, does he really kind of need that win, even if it is in a smaller event like this, to just for his confidence, to get his confidence back?
It's not a matter of confidence. The success. Sometimes we fail when we're trying to succeed, and the failures that he would have, I don't want anybody to look at them as a negative. Those are the things that have been driving him on to becoming a success again.
Mm-hmm.
And how often in life his was kind of a dire situation, but how often do we get a chance to reboot? How often do we get that second chance? And Tiger hasn't used any of his second chances until this last year.
Mm-hmm.
And I think he's going to do the most with it. And having Ian Poulter decide that he's going to go over and play overseas where I don't feel it's as strong a competition.
Mm-hmm.
If Seve Ballesteros and Greg Norman were playing over there at this time, I'd say that's a really strong tour.
Mm-hmm.
And I still don't
Well,
think
all
that
those Euros that are that done so well, and they are doing well, but they've always, all of them have had trouble winning over. Monty never won over here. I mean, none of these guys.
Never.
Westwood's, as good as he's been playing, he can't seem to get a win, and even in not necessarily the majors, but just any tournament he's in here. And a lot of those guys are in the same boat. I mean, they seem to do really well, but in Europe, but they still have a hard time winning on just a regular PGA Tour event here.
Well, I agree with that. And we gave the PGA Championship to somebody that wasn't an American phenomena because of a penalty on the 18th hole that I still can't comprehend.
No,
I think
exactly.
that he was stolen. It was stolen from him this
yeah.
year. But here's the difference. Everybody thinks Colin Montgomery is a jerk and a stuck-up idiot. I've had the pleasure of being around him, and he's one of the nicest people on the face of the earth. And that's the difference between this tour and that tour. This tour is so much more competitive. The desire is beyond all belief. And on the European tour, I will tell you that I can't think. I've always referred to Lee Westwood as one of the nicest people out there. It is just a really nice tour where Judd and I talk all the time.
It's a fraternity deal.
It's a fraternity deal. You're my friend. Oh, you'll win this week, and I'll get my chance later on. And that's one thing we talk about our young amateurs and when he was a coach. What kid has the desire to go out there and kick your royal tail, even though you're my best friend?
Mm-hmm.
And which kid says, "Oh, I really don't want to beat people. I want everybody to like me."
Well, you
I
mentioned
think that's the Like Me tour.
your point about Tiger, rooting for Tiger because he's, and everybody needs the elite person for their either tour or team or whatever. It helps. My theory on that is it raises the level of the competition. Then it raises everybody else's level, because I think before Tiger, there was a little bit of that on maybe even on the American tour with the Freddie Couples and those guys. Just kind of like, yeah, well, I won this week. Hey, this is a pretty good life we got going here. And then Tiger showed up, and all of a sudden everybody started having to work out a little more and play a little harder. And everybody's game has been raised since he's been there, because if you're going to compete with him, you're going to have to.
Well, and we're 15 some odd years into the Tiger Woods era of golf. So now you start to have, kids, let's say, you got kids that are learning to play golf when they're 5 to 10 years old.
Mm-hmm.
They've grown up, and the only way that they've known this game is, you go to the practice range, you practice, your golf, you go out and play, and then you go to the gym and work out. When Tiger came onto the scene, they had a fitness trailer, but let's face it, it was, some guys, pedaling around on a little bicycle inside. They walked the first tee with a couple camels and maybe hit a six-pack on the way home, and that's the way it was. I mean, the Tim Herons,
that's right,
are gone. So you got these kids that, number one, are in fantastic shape. Okay, they're maybe not as good a shape as Tiger, I don't know, but in fantastic shape. But they have had Tiger's picture on their wall. They're thinking, man, that's who I want. I want a piece of him. Now, that's different than Davis Love looking at Tiger Woods going, who is this kid? I'm kind of scared of this kid. He hits it a mile. Now, all these kids hit it a million miles, and they're not scared of him. So, yeah, you're right, Tim. It does bring the level of play. The same thing happened with Michael Jordan in basketball.
Yeah.
He brought everybody's level up.
Sure.
Now, love him or hate him, and that's a lot what you'd see with Tiger. Some people would hate Tiger because he won all the time. They just wanted to see him lose. Other people love Tiger because they just liked him and wanted to see him win. And I thought that made golf even more exciting.
Mm-hmm.
The same with basketball and Michael Jordan. I think sports need that dominant person so you can either root for him or root against him.
Well, it keeps everybody on edge and having to do their best, because let's face it, as much money and everything, the lifestyle of a professional athlete in anything is so lavish these days. I mean, you kind of need something to keep that edge going, because it'd be awful easy with all the distractions to just kind of not not practice today. You know, it's hard or whatever.
And absolutely, and that's why Tiger being number one for as long as he was almost ridiculous, because once you become the number one in whatever you're doing, there's only one place to go.
Yeah,
and that's usually what we'd see, whether it be Curtis Strange or Ian Woosnam or whoever became the number one player in the world. They would only be for Fred Couples a short amount of time and be like, wait a minute, now what do I do? My whole life I've just tried to improve to the point where I could be the best, and now I'm the best. It's human nature to relax, and Tiger never did until if relaxation was, I don't know if he really was relaxed, but his time away from the game was forced onto him.
Yeah.
And we're hearing Tiger, talk about, and I'm not saying this is the greatest thing, but before, golf was the number one thing in his mind. When he woke up,
yeah.
it was tunnel vision.
Yeah.
I'm
Nicklaus,
sure he loved
that's all
his
he thought
kids, but he had tunnel vision. It's time to practice. I'm not gonna go to this game. Well, his kids are old enough to do that. Now all of a sudden, his kids are important to him. And that's what Jack Nicklaus said. He said, "Hey, wait till he has children and start spending time with them, and let's see if he can still win tournaments at this rate. If he does, hey, great. But it's like I said, it's when you're just focused like that." I wouldn't say it's easier to be the number one player in the world, but that's what you see. Nick Faldo was that way, and he even says that.
Yep.
So people thought I was a bad person. I just didn't care. All I thought about was golf.
Now, one last type thing. Then we'll talk a little bit about Q School, which we got Chris Baker playing in and Guy Boros. But first round of the 6 rounds, I think it is. But if Tiger. Everybody says you're hearing a lot of the players say, and you mentioned Poulter saying, "Hey, hello, number 2," but a lot of guys are saying, "Oh, Tiger's lost the mystique now. He's not as intimidating anymore to the rest of the tour or something." But if he wins a couple, can he get that intimidation back, or is it gone forever?
I'm not a gambler, but I remember every time they'd have a British Open or something like that, the odds on Tiger Woods were like Secretariat, the great racehorse.
Yeah.
And Secretariat only had to run against 8, 9, 10, 11 horses. Yeah. There's 144, sometimes in the majors, 154 people in the field. And to think there's a bet, Tiger Woods versus the field.
Versus everybody else.
And that day's going to come back again, because I know Tiger didn't have the chance to work out this year like I know how he does. He didn't have the chance to practice like he did. And I think he has that opportunity now. And it's just amazing. One little European saying, "Hey, number 2, how you doing?" I think that might be the trigger that.
Well, and I'll tell you right now,
of the way.
2 things. I really like Ian Poulter now. I think he looks like a fool in his clothes and his hair.
Yes.
But I really like Ian Poulter because he said that. I just think that's pretty fun. I mean, I guarantee you Tiger Woods has a sense of humor and probably laughed because they both live in Orlando.
Yeah.
The other things that, like Mark said, you never count Tiger out. I mean, not only did the guy win the U.S. Open with a broken leg and 13 different girlfriends and all the things. I mean, you can't count the guy out. I mean, I'm not saying that,
You're right, though. I think it's all about making the putts. All about making the putts.
That's what I mean. Seriously, you go back and you watch the highlights of Tiger winning all these major championships. He made everything.
He didn't get the putter. He still might win. He's still good enough.
If Phil Mickelson putted like Tiger for one major, he'd win by like 30 shots. I mean, you think Phil misses every putt he looks at, and he still wins 2 Masters and a PGA. Tiger didn't miss a putt for 16 years.
A couple years ago, there was a time where Tiger at the Masters didn't quite make every putt, and there's a picture of a guy over here that did make every putt. And
yes, that's true.
When we bring up great putters, I think we have
to
give
give one
this
right
guy,
here.
I think
Zach
we have to
Johnson.
give this Zach a chance.
Absolutely, and that was a great example. If you go back and watch the highlights of that, and you see, you're right, Mark, he didn't make every putt. I mean, it was like, as I remember watching that and thinking, oh my God, Tiger's going to make this putt, and he missed. And it was like, Tiger Woods missed a putt in a major championship. He missed putt and hit balls in the water.
Yeah. Yep.
Must have had girl trouble that weekend.
He must, yeah. Who would have thought, Hey, when we come back, we're going to have great movie facts for hacks. A quick little giveaway here with some great stuff. Always a huge giveaway here on the tee. Always worthwhile. So get your dialing fingers ready for that. And we'll also just touch on the Q School a little bit since we got a little local flavor to it. So stay on the tee right here in 7800, The Champ.